I had spent 12 years uncovering other people's secrets. I never once suspected that the most dangerous one was waiting inside my own home. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm a private investigator, and not the kind you're thinking of. I don't follow cheating husbands or wait outside motels with a long lens. My work happens in boardrooms, stolen contracts, bribed executives, employees selling secrets to the highest bidder. My cases usually end with someone being walked out of a building by security, not a marriage ending in a parking lot. That was why Victor Lang's call interested me. Lang was the CEO of Asterion Technologies, a company about to launch a technology that would make him a household name. 3 weeks before the announcement, a competitor filed a patent that read almost line for line like Asterion's own research. Someone inside the company was leaking everything. We met after midnight in an empty conference room on the 42nd floor. Lang was in his 60s, immaculately dressed, with the kind of tired eyes that belong to a man who has stopped trusting anyone in his life. "If this gets out," he said, "my stock collapses, the board removes me, and 7 years of work disappear in a week." He slid a black folder across the table. Inside, photographs of 6 employees, printouts of internal emails, 3 addresses. One name stood apart from the rest, Michael Trent, Lang's chief strategist. His photograph bothered me. I couldn't say why yet. "You'll have full access," Lang said. "But nobody can know you're working for me. Not even your own head of security. Especially not him." I took the case. That evening, my wife Claire was in the kitchen when I got home, sleeves pushed up, humming something off-key on purpose because she knew it annoyed me. 8 years married, and she still did that, the bad humming, the raised eyebrow daring me to complain. I stood in the doorway for a second longer than I needed to. She had flour on her wrist. There was a bottle of the cheap wine we always joked was our good year open on the counter, because we'd bought a case of it during a trip we couldn't really afford and had been slowly drinking our way through the joke ever since. "You're staring," she said, without turning around. "I'm allowed to stare at my own wife. You're allowed to set the table." It was an ordinary night. That's the part one keep coming back to. If I had known what was coming, I would have stood in that doorway a little longer. "New client?" she asked, over dinner. "Might be nothing. Interesting nothing. Probably not." Lying to Claire had never come easily to me. She read hesitation the way I read forged signatures, instantly, without effort. That night she just smiled and topped off my glass. Her phone buzzed 3 times during dinner. Each time, she turned it face down without looking at it. I noticed. Then I told myself an investigator can destroy his own marriage by treating ordinary behavior like evidence. I let it go. I wish I hadn't. I also understand now that it wouldn't have mattered. The next morning I went through the internal emails Lang had given me. Most of it was routine. One encrypted thread stood out, the sender signed only as Orchid. No secrets in the messages, just instructions. Asterisk the package is ready. Asterisk. Asterisk use the second entrance. Asterisk. Asterisk Wednesday. 9:30 p.m. Asterisk. The address was one Lang had flagged, a shut-down accounting office on Westbridge Avenue. I parked across the street at 9:10 with a camera on the passenger seat and rain turning the streetlights into soft, useless circles. At 9:27, a black sedan pulled up outside the building. A woman got out. I couldn't see her face under the umbrella. But I recognized the coat, pale gray, with a narrow red belt. I'd bought her that coat myself, 2 anniversaries ago, and teased her for a week about how much it cost. I told myself there are 1,000 gray coats in this city. I raised the camera anyway, and found her left hand through the rain. The ring caught the streetlight for less than a second. It was enough. I sat in the car with the engine ticking, and for a long moment I didn't do anything at all. I didn't call out. I didn't get out of the car. I just watched the door close behind her and told myself, very calmly, that there would be an explanation, because there is always an explanation, because I had built an entire career on the belief that there is always an explanation if you look long enough. My phone lit up. Asterisk going to bed early. Don't work too late. See asterisk. I read it twice. Then I put the phone face down on the seat, the same way she'd done at dinner, and I waited. For the first time in 12 years, I didn't know if I was watching a suspect. Or my wife. She came out at 10:04, umbrella down, face finally clear in the light over the door. She wasn't alone. Michael Trent walked out behind her. The sixth name in Lang's folder. They stood under the entrance light, talking too quietly for me to hear, and then he put his hand on her shoulder. She didn't move away from it. I made myself keep the camera steady. It's a strange kind of discipline, photographing your own wife with another man and not letting your hands shake. I don't recommend learning it. Michael drove east. I followed him instead of her, because some part of me wasn't ready yet to follow her. He stopped at a parking garage under the Kingsley Hotel. A second car pulled in a few minutes later, Rebecca Sloan, Asterian's director of internal security. The woman whose entire job was supposedly finding this leak. Lang had told me not to trust her. Now I understood why he'd said it. Michael got into her car. 11 minutes later he came back out carrying a small metal case, the kind Asterian used to move prototype components. Whatever this was, my wife had walked out of that building minutes before it changed hands. She wasn't an accident in this. She was a step in it. When I got home, the bedroom light was off. Claire was already in bed. "Long night," she said, half asleep. Longer than I expected. She reached for the lamp, and I saw a small blue mark on the inside of her wrist, the kind of ink an old security stamp leaves behind. "Where were you tonight?" I asked. I kept my voice light. I'm good at that. It's the job. She didn't pause long enough for most people to notice. I noticed. "Home," she said. "Why?" "No reason." It was a perfect lie. Steady voice, easy face, no defensive follow-up question, the kind of lie that only works on people who don't know what to look for. I know exactly what to look for. I lay next to her for a long time that night, listening to her breathe, and thought about the coat, and the ring, and the 8 years, and understood that I had already started investigating my own marriage without deciding to. The next morning, after she left for work, I searched the house. I hated myself while I did it. I did it anyway. Her laptop was clean. Her desk held client files, tax records, nothing unusual. Then I checked the gray coat. The pockets were empty, but the inner lining had been re-stitched recently, a neat seam that didn't belong there. I opened it carefully. Inside was an old access card. Elena Cross, Strategic Risk Consultant. Claire's face. A stranger's name. The card was 4 years old, 2 years before Claire had ever mentioned working near Asterian. I photographed it and put everything back exactly as I'd found it, the way I'd tell any client's team to do it, because that's the job even when it's your own house. At my office, I ran the name. Most of the files connected to it had been wiped, but one archived payment remained, $180,000, paid to Elena Cross, for something called Project Glasshouse. Personally signed off by Victor Lang. I called him. What was Glasshouse? Silence, longer than it should have been. Where did you hear that name? You hired me to find your leak. This is me finding it. It was shut down years ago. That wasn't my question. He hung up. 20 minutes later, my access to Asterian systems was gone. I sat with the folder Lang had handed me and understood, slowly, that something about this didn't add up. He'd given me 6 suspects and 3 addresses, and one of those addresses had led me straight to my own wife. Either that was the worst coincidence of my career, or it wasn't a coincidence at all. Somebody had wanted me to find her. That evening Claire told me she had a late meeting. I followed her anyway. She drove out past the city limits, to a private house, another of the addresses from Lang's folder. Michael's car was already there. I watched through a gap in the curtains as she laid papers across a table. He leaned in close, said something, and she smiled. Then he kissed her. I lowered the camera and sat back in the seat. I want to be honest about what that moment actually felt like, because it wasn't the sharp, clean anger you see in movies. It was slower than that, and colder. It felt like watching a house you grew up in get quietly demolished from a safe distance, not shocking, exactly, just final. I sat there long enough that the rain started again, and I let myself feel all of it before I made myself pick the camera back up, because whatever else was happening, I still needed the evidence, and some old, stubborn part of me still needed to know for certain rather than just believe it. When I finally raised the lens again, I saw what was behind them. Pinned across the back wall, floor to ceiling, were photographs. Of me. My office. My car. My front door. Dozens of them, arranged in order, going back years. They hadn't just expected me to start investigating. They'd been investigating me first. I waited until they left, then let myself into the house. Inside, it wasn't a home. No mail, no food in the fridge, furniture arranged like a stage set. An operations center dressed up to look lived in. The photographs on the wall went back 9 years, 1 full year before I'd ever met Claire. Beneath them, typed reports on how I worked cases, how I read people, how long I could go without sleeping. One page was titled Subject Response Profile, and one line on it made my hands go still. Mercer prioritizes evidence over personal loyalty. Presented with proof against someone close to him, he will suppress emotion and keep working the case. They hadn't guessed how I'd react to finding out about Claire. They'd calculated it in advance, like a formula, and built the whole thing around the answer. On a desk nearby I found forged bank statements in my name, showing $500,000 paid to me by Asterian's competitor. Fabricated emails between me and the very employees I'd been sent to investigate. Somebody was building a case against me. Then a monitor on the desk woke up on its own. Live camera feeds, my office, my street, my house. A message typed itself across the screen. You are ahead of schedule. I pulled the hard drive and got out through the back door as a car pulled into the drive out front. At home, Claire was already in the kitchen. How was work? She asked. Unproductive. You look tired. I'm starting to think my client lied to me. Clients usually do. She smiled when she said it, and for a moment I hated how much I still wanted that smile to mean what it used to mean. I could have put the fake ID card on the table right then. I thought about it. Instead I asked what she wanted for dinner, and we spent the next 2 hours playing husband and wife, each of us waiting to see who would blink first. Neither of us did. Later, alone in a locked room at my office, I got into the stolen drive. Most of it was encrypted. One folder wasn't. Glasshouse, Phase 4. Here's the simple version of what I found. Stripped of all the corporate language they'd buried it in, Glasshouse wasn't an energy project. It was a program built to watch people, their messages, their movements, their habits, and predict what they'd do next, before they did it. And it didn't stop at predicting. It could quietly arrange the world around a person until they made the exact choice the program had already written down for them. It could find a whistleblower before they blew the whistle. It could manufacture the evidence to bury them. Claire's name was all through the early files. Not as Elena Cross, as the person who designed it. Michael handled the buyers. Rebecca erased the internal trail. Lang wrote the checks. They weren't rivals fighting over stolen technology. They were partners. One video file was dated 6 weeks earlier, Lang, Claire, and Michael, in the same conference room where Lang had hired me. The investigator needs to believe there's a real leak, Lang said. He will, Claire answered. Daniel believes evidence, even when it costs him everything. Michael leaned toward her. And if he finds Glasshouse? Claire looked straight into the camera. Then we use him to prove it works. The video ended. My phone rang immediately. Lang. You were at the Westbridge house, he said. Not a question. You knew Claire was part of this before you ever called me. I knew Elena Cross was part of it. I didn't know she'd married you. Another lie, I just watched him plan this with her. Why frame me? You're not being framed, he said. You're being tested. An alarm went off on my screen. Someone was wiping the drive remotely, file by file, faster than I could copy them. I managed to save one document before the connection died, a schedule for the final phase of Glasshouse. My name was at the top. Below it, 3 lines. Asterisk destroy his professional reputation. Asterisk. Asterisk make him doubt his own evidence. Asterisk. Asterisk force him to confess publicly. Asterisk. Deadline, Friday, 8 p.m. 46 hours before my wife turned me into the criminal I'd been hired to find. The next 2 days moved fast, and I'll give you the short version rather than the long list, because the long version is just a catalog of small disasters. My biggest client dropped me without explanation. My business account got frozen over suspicious transfers I'd never made. A courier delivered a package of stolen Asterian files to my office, and my own security camera recorded me signing for it. Each piece looked ordinary on its own. Stacked together, they told a clean, believable story. Daniel Mercer had stolen from Asterian and sold it to a competitor. Glasshouse wasn't predicting my life anymore. It was writing it. Rebecca called from a blocked number and asked to meet. We picked a train station, crowded, loud, easy to disappear in. Claire's running something Lang never signed off on, she said, before I'd even sat down. Why should I believe a word you say? You shouldn't. But I'll tell you anyway, because my name just showed up in the next test file, and I'd rather not find out what that means. That was the first honest thing anyone had told me in 2 days. She said Glasshouse had started as something almost decent, a way to catch corporate corruption before it happened. Claire had taken it somewhere else entirely, not just watching people, but quietly rearranging their world until they arrived at the exact decision the program wanted. And I'm the demonstration, I said. You're the final one. There are buyers flying in Friday night, government contractors, private intelligence firms. If Glasshouse can make an experienced investigator confess to crimes he didn't commit, it's worth more than Asterian's entire energy division. Why did Lang even call me in the first place? I gave him your name, Rebecca said. I wanted somebody Lang didn't fully control walking around inside this. Claire didn't fight it, she was that confident she could handle whoever he picked. It wasn't the answer I expected. It also, finally, made both of the stories I'd heard make sense together instead of contradicting each other. Before she left, she handed me a flash drive. Financial records. Recordings. Buyer names. Everything you need. Why help me now, after all this? Because I'd rather burn this down myself than wait for Claire to decide I'm a loose end. Back at the office, alone, I opened the drive on an isolated machine. It was empty. 10 minutes later, federal agents came through the door with a warrant. They found the planted files, the forged emails, the fake bank records, everything, laid out exactly where they'd be easiest to find. Rebecca had walked me straight into it. I spent 5 hours in a room answering questions before my attorney got me out. No charges yet. But the investigation was real now, official, out of my hands. Reporters were already waiting outside. Mr. Mercer, did you steal from Asterian? Did your wife help expose you? That last question stopped me cold. Across the street, Claire stood next to Michael, playing frightened for the cameras while he held her like he was protecting her. The loyal wife who'd uncovered her criminal husband and turned to a trusted executive for help. It wasn't just a betrayal anymore. It was the story they wanted the world to believe. I walked away without saying a word. Friday morning, I called Lang and offered to confess publicly, on one condition: Claire's protection, guaranteed. He agreed too fast for it to mean anything. The confession would happen that evening at Asterion, with the buyers watching through tinted glass while I read a statement in front of the press. Exactly what Glasshouse had predicted I'd eventually do. I wore a hidden microphone into the building. I made no real effort to hide it well, because by then I understood that the smart move was to be exactly as predictable as they expected, right up until the one place I wasn't. Security found the mic in seconds. Michael pulled it off my jacket, smiling. "You were always predictable," he said. He walked me into a private office, where Claire was waiting alone. For the first time since this began, neither of us bothered pretending. Was any of it real? I asked. Our marriage? I didn't answer. She walked to the window and looked down at the reporters gathering below. "You were chosen because you're intelligent, disciplined, and painfully loyal to facts," she said. "I studied you for a year before we ever met. You married me for Glasshouse. At first. And Michael?" That same quiet smile from the window at the private house. "Michael understands ambition. You only ever understood duty." It landed exactly the way she meant it to. I didn't give her the satisfaction of showing it. She set a prepared confession on the desk. "You'll read this downstairs in 10 minutes. And if I don't? You lose your license, your company, your freedom. Eventually you'll even start wondering if the evidence might be true. That's why Glasshouse always wins." I picked it up. She was right that she'd predicted every move I could make. So I'd already arranged for someone else to make the next one. At 8 p.m. I walked onto the stage holding Claire's confession. Lang, Michael, and a row of buyers watched from behind tinted glass upstairs. Claire stood near the stage, calm, certain. "My name is Daniel Mercer," I began. "For the past 11 months, I have been selling confidential information belonging to Asterion Technologies." The room started buzzing. I kept reading. "I recruited employees, built false identities, moved stolen files through shell companies. My wife discovered what I'd done and cooperated with Asterion to expose me." Claire's prediction was becoming true, word by word. Then every light in the room went out. The emergency system kicked on, and the big screen behind me lit up blue. A video started playing, Claire and Michael, inside the private house. "The investigator has to confess voluntarily," Michael's recorded voice said. Claire laughed. "Voluntary is just another word for correctly manipulated." More clips followed, forged evidence being built, payments to Rebecca, private data pulled from Asterion employees, conversations with buyers who had no legal right to any of it. Every reporter in the room turned toward Claire. For the first time, she looked genuinely uncertain. The person I'd arranged to make the next move was Victor Lang. He'd funded Glasshouse and helped build the trap around me, but men like Lang are more afraid of losing power than of being caught. Before I ever walked into that building, I'd sent him proof that Claire and Michael were planning to sell the technology without him. I didn't ask him to help me. I just showed him he was already being replaced. Lang unlocked Asterion's archived servers and released everything to every reporter in the room, and to federal investigators at the same time. Glasshouse had predicted my loyalty, my anger, my methods, down to the smallest habit. It never accounted for Lang's ego. Security sealed the exits. The buyers scattered for their phones. Michael slipped out a side door. Claire stood completely still. I set the false confession down on the podium. "You studied the wrong man," I told her. "No," she said, quietly. "I studied exactly the right one." Federal agents moved through the crowd. Rebecca was with them, her drive had been empty on purpose, because she'd guessed Claire would have me arrested and searched the moment I set foot in the building. So she'd sent everything straight to Lang instead, betting he'd turn on Claire once he saw the truth for himself. She hadn't betrayed me. She'd let my arrest happen so the whole demonstration would look real enough for Lang to believe it, a brutal gamble, but it worked. Agents took Claire, Lang, and several of the buyers in for questioning. They found Michael in the parking garage before he made it out. By sunrise, Asterian stock had collapsed. The news was already calling Glasshouse the biggest corporate surveillance scandal in a decade. My fake accounts were confirmed as fraud. The case against me was suspended. Everyone told me I'd won. I didn't feel like I had. Before they took her out, Claire asked for 2 minutes alone with me. 2 agents stayed close. "You still think this was about selling Glasshouse," she said. "It was worth billions. So is every weapon, right up until somebody builds a better one. What does that mean?" She glanced toward the glass, toward Rebecca. "Ask her why she really chose you. Lang hired me. Rebecca put your name on his desk. You already know that part. That was the test." "That wasn't the test, Daniel." For 1 second, the certainty dropped out of her face completely, and what was underneath it looked, unmistakably, like fear. "You weren't the subject of Glasshouse," she said. "You were the key required to open it." The agents led her away before I could ask her what that meant. I went back to my office that afternoon. No forced entry, but someone had gone through the room carefully. Only one thing was missing, an old case notebook I'd kept locked in my desk for 12 years. It held everything from my very first corporate case. The one I never closed. A tech company had vanished overnight. Servers wiped, executives gone, its lead programmer never found. Her name was Eleanor Mercer. My mother. Sitting on my desk where the notebook used to be was a photograph of her. Someone had turned it over and written 5 words on the back. Glasshouse belonged to her first. Rebecca showed up at my office after midnight. When I put the photograph down in front of her, she stopped pretending she didn't know what it meant. "Eleanor built the first version of Glasshouse," she admitted. "But not to control anyone. She built it to catch corporate corruption before it happened, to see where the evidence would be hidden before anyone could bury it. Then Lang stole it from her. Lang. Michael. Me. All 3 of us. She told me my mother had found out what they were planning and tried to destroy her own work before they could take it. Before she disappeared, she'd split the program in 2. Asterian recovered the surveillance half, the part that watches. The other half, the part that thinks like an investigator, that decides what the watching means, she hid completely. For 12 years, nobody had been able to rebuild it. Then Claire found me. "My mother used to run these little pattern games with me when I was a kid," I said slowly. "Questions. Puzzles. The way she taught me to look at things." "She wasn't playing games," Rebecca said. "She was teaching you her methods without ever telling you what they were for. Everything you do without thinking, how you build a case, how you read a lie, that's the missing piece. It's not in a server somewhere. It's in you." My stomach dropped. For 8 years, Claire had copied my case files, recorded conversations, tracked every decision I made, not to catch me, but to rebuild the exact thing my mother had hidden inside my own habits. Why the whole staged investigation, then? Why not just watch me? Watching isn't proof. Claire needed to show the new version could actually beat the person it came from. It didn't beat me. Rebecca looked at me with something close to pity. "Are you sure about that?" She put a tablet on the desk. Ownership records, every Glasshouse patent transferred, hours before the scandal ever broke, into a small consulting firm called Cross Strategic Systems. Owned entirely by Claire. Lang, Michael, and the buyers had all believed they were about to sell the technology. In reality, Claire had used every one of them just to set its price. Then she'd use me to expose them, take down Asterion, and erase everyone who could ever challenge her ownership of it. Even Michael had been part of the plan to remove, not a partner in what came after. The affair had been real, Rebecca was sure of that much, but Claire had never intended to share any of this with him. Evidence against Michael sat in every file that reached investigators, while anything tying Claire directly to the illegal sales had already been quietly removed. She knew Lang would turn on her, I said. She knew you'd be the one to make him. My victory had been the last move in her plan, not mine. She'd predicted I'd find the photographs, needle Lang's ego, and blow the whole thing open, and she'd been right about every step of it. What happened to my mother? Rebecca looked away. I don't know. She disappeared before Lang ever found the missing piece. You expect me to believe that? No, she said. Eleanor taught you better than that. I handed the photo back. Rebecca stared at it a second too long before she left, longer than an honest answer needed. 3 days later, Lang and Michael were charged with corporate espionage, illegal surveillance, and evidence fabrication. Rebecca took an immunity deal in exchange for testimony. Claire was released. There wasn't enough, prosecutors said, to prove she'd participated willingly. She told her own version of it, a consultant manipulated by Asterion, and the brave wife who'd helped expose her husband's false confession. By the end of the week, she was gone. 6 months passed. My license came back. I closed the agency anyway. I no longer trust evidence that arrives too easily, or conclusions that feel entirely like my own. Then a black folder showed up outside my apartment door. Suspected employees. Internal correspondence. 3 addresses. Identical, almost line for line, to the folder Lang had first handed me. The client this time was Cross Strategic Systems. The last page held a photograph of Claire, standing outside a glass office building. Underneath, in her handwriting. Asterisk, you found me once. Let's see if you can do it again. Asterisk. I turned the page. Another photograph, taken that same morning, through my own apartment window. Me, at my desk, opening the folder. Beneath it, a printed line. Asterisk, subject will accept the investigation. Asterisk. I almost laughed at that. Then I saw the second line underneath it. Asterisk, subject will believe refusing is his own decision. Asterisk. I closed the folder and walked away from it. For 3 hours, I told myself it was over. At 4:17 that afternoon, I went back, opened the folder again, and read the first address. That was when I finally understood the truth of all of it. Claire hadn't built Glasshouse to replace investigators like me. She'd built it to make more of us. And I had never been its target. I was its first finished product.